So I thought we'd have a bit of fun today and have a go with some beads. I love beads, I've got thousands of them, but I don't get to use them that often in my projects, so I thought I'd indulge myself a little bit today. And I thought I would show you them in some lettering. We get quite a lot of requests for how to do embroidery and beads in lettering. So I'll show you in this here, beads, and we'll fill in the B, and I'll show you a couple of different methods of putting the beads down in these other letters here. I'll talk about what we need as we get as we stitch, so we can get going and put some down. So need these for this. Okay, so let's talk about needles first. I'm using an embroidery needle, a pretty small one, a number 10. The smallest that you can is great because you need to get the beads over the eye of the needle. And the eye is the widest part, so if it doesn't go, the beads don't go on, you're going to need them to change your needle. So smallest you can, or if you can't go any smaller, you'll have to make your beads bigger. But you can actually get a beading needle. This is what one looks like here, and you can see how much longer it is. It's got a very thin eye on it that goes through the beads, but because it's long, you can see how this one's bent quite a bit, and I'm not so keen on them for that reason. They do bend and get a bit out of control, but it's good for threading lots of beads on in one go. So you can use one of those if you want to, but I find my normal embroidery needle is fine. So the thread I'm using is specific to beadwork. It's called Nymo thread. This is what it looks like here. It comes in different colours. It's a nylon monofilament, so it won't unravel and it won't break. It does eventually, but it's pretty strong stuff for beads. So if you've got some of that, that's great. If you haven't got any of that, a normal sewn cotton is just fine. And if you run it through some beeswax, that will just smooth it out and make it go through the beads a bit easier. So that's absolutely fine. So I've got my thread and my needle. Let's look at the beads. So I'm going to use a variety of beads here. Just some random ones that I've got in the bottom of my bead box, but I wanted to show you the different kinds that there are. So we've got some seed beads. These are the round ones here. They're not regular, so they will vary in size and shape a little bit, but that's quite nice. You can use that in your projects. And we've got different sizes, we've got different colours. Some I don't know if you can see that one there. It's got a silver centre to it. We've got pearl ones, we've got see-through ones, so they come in all shapes and sizes. We've got some long ones as well. These long ones here, those are called bugle beads, so they can be really nice. And then we've got some decorative ones that are different shapes, different sizes. We've even got a little holly leaf in there. So I'm going to use a mix of these beads on this project. They look quite nice mixed together. Oh, I just want to show you as well this board that they're on. This is a velvet board, and this is great for just containing them and stopping them flying all over the place and rolling on the floor. The pile of the velvet, they sit on the pile of the velvet so they don't roll off. So this is really good to have as well if you want to do a lot of beading. So I'm going to fill in the B. So I'm going to put a knot on the top. This is a waist knot. This will get cut off later. So put it right out of the way. We're working on the B, so get it out of the way. I'm going to fill this shape in. So I'm just going to do 2 small starting stitches close by, just to start the thread off. And then when we've done some stitching, we can cut this knot off later. Now, we've got to fit the beads into the shape, and we don't want to put too many in a crowd. It will lose the shape of the bead and we won't be able to read it. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle, I think, for this. Just going to select a bead so I can bring my bead board to my embroidery, just thread one onto the needle. They're all going to go down individually for this. Slide it to the bottom of the thread, lie the thread down and take your thread down the other side of the bead and pull it down quite tightly. You can see that fabric bouncing, and then it's best to come up away from that bead and thread one on like so. Slide it to the bottom, lie it flat, and then take your needle back down towards that first bead. That just stops you sticking the needle up through it and moving things around. Now we want to think carefully about this shape in the middle. We want to be able to see it, so we don't want to go too close. But remember, your thread is going down the middle of the bead, so you've got half the width of the bead on either side of the thread, so take that into account so that you don't bring your thread up on the line, because your bead will then go over the line. Get the thread caught down the frame. That's close enough. So I'm going to just work them in a little bunch. Don't jump around, because then you end up with weird spaces that you have to fill in. So work them nice and closely. Being as random as I can, mixing the colours up. I'm not too worried about what colour's going where. I've got a set of colours that go quite nicely, so I'm just going to let them tell me what goes next, really. Just pick up what I like. There's a slightly bigger one here. Might fit in that gap nicely. Slide to the bottom. Take the needle down towards those beads. Pull it down nice and tightly. Let's put in one of these bugle beads, I think. These are really lovely. So just a longer version of a seed bead. Slide it up. I'm going to go along the bottom of that part of the bee there. Try and form the shape of the letter so we can still read it when I've finished. Let's put one up the side as well. Just coming in from that edge so that my bead doesn't go over the design line, like so. You can adjust, you can move it around, see where does it look best. I like it there. Try not to line them all up, because you get rows and rows of beads. That's not really what we're trying to do. We want a bit of a random effect. So away from the previous bead, let's put a white one on, thread the bead on, slide to the bottom, lie it down, take your needle down. Now just a note on the colour of the thread I'm using. Obviously all my beads are different. You would normally match up your thread to your beads, but all of my beads are different. So I've kind of matched the thread to the fabric, so at least something will blend in. And it's a fairly neutral colour as well. So if you can't match your beads, try and match the fabric for your thread. So I'm just going to keep on. What colour should we have now? Let's have a gold one. I can pick it up. Controlling the thread down a little bit just so it doesn't get in a knot. This Naima is quite good at knotting, if you see what I mean, but a little bit of control on it will help that. I'm just going to go to the corner, show you what happens at the corner. I think we will put down, that's quite a nice one. Let's come in at the corner with that one. You want to sort of define the letter if you can. Put beads in where it's appropriate to the shape. We've got a nice sharp corner here, so I'm going to just put that one in right up there like that. We'll get that nice sharp corner. Let's lie that down first, see how it sits. That's good. Get some really lovely textures when you use beads, and it fills in quite quickly, which is sometimes a good thing. If you want to do something in a hurry. There's a bit of a bigger one here. Look, I'm going to squeeze in there. I think that'll go in there nicely. Guiding that thread down. There we go. So sort of work your way from your previous bead. Don't jump around the shapes. Like I say, you'll get some really funny gaps in it otherwise. So build up the layers of beads, fitting in what you can. That's the good thing about using mixed beads, is you can find something that will fit. Like I said, these seed beads are irregular. You might get the odd one that doesn't fit on your needle, doesn't fit over the eye. Just look for another one. If one doesn't, then another one probably will. So just abandon that one and look for another one, because they're not all the same size. Right, I'm going to continue around this B. So I'll show you what it looks like when you're finished, and then we'll have another go at something else on the next letter. My thread's getting a bit short now, so I'm going to finish it off. You can just see it does start to wear a little bit. The fibres just come apart a bit. It's not going to break, but it's just getting a bit worn now, so I'm going to just do some small stitches in that space just to finish it. I'm going to do actually about 3 or 4 just to make super sure that it doesn't come undone. Bring it back to the top, cut the thread off. You can also actually cut your waste knot off now as well. Bring in another thread. Start that off the same way that I did before. Couple of small stitches to get it going. Just secures that end. And then away we go again. Okay, so I finished my letter B. I'm just going to have a quick check, make sure there's no more gaps that I need to fill with some beads. I'm quite happy with that, I think. So to finish my thread off, I'm just going to bring it up between the beads, do a little stitch between them, 3 or 4 I think, just to be on the safe side. If you want to turn your frame over and weave it through some threads on the back, that's absolutely fine. It's just easier for me to do it this way. So last one, between the beads, back up to the top. Cut the thread off, and that one's done. So we'll have a look now at a different technique in the letter E. So I'm going to use the same thread that I used before. This is the Nymo thread. Got a knot in the end. I'm going to part my knot out of the way and do 2 small stitches on my design line to get my thread started. Now I'm going to work along this line here, up around the top and down the side and underneath. I'm going to put a row of beads on now to cover the line. Because I want to come down the side here, I need to leave room for a bead down the side. So I'm going to just start my needle a little bit in from the edge there to allow for the beads that come around the bottom. Now in this B we put lots together. They're all different directions. We want a row of them now, so I'm actually going to thread them onto the needle. It helps if they're the same size for this. Just while you practice the technique, you can have a play with using different sizes later. I'm going to put 5 on there, and if I just push them up with the needle, you'll see that they come to that corner of the E. And then I just take the needle down at the end, and I have a row of beads. Now at the moment they move, they're not very stable, so I need to stitch them down. So I'm going to couch over the thread that they're threaded onto, and I'm going to go in between each bead. So I'm bringing my thread up on that line, on that black design line, between those 2 beads and down the other side of the thread, back in on the line again. I'm going to stitch over that thread. Same there. Go over each one to make sure it's really secure. I'm actually taking the thread between the beads first and then taking the needle down. Just make sure that I'm in the right place. Now you'll see that they don't move at all. Really steady. So I'm going to come up around the top of the E. So I'm going to come up above that red bead there. I want to make it look like it's a continuous line of beads. And I'm going to do another 5. I don't want to go all the way round because that will be a bit hard to control. So I'm threading on another 5 beads. Take them to the bottom of the thread. Now you need to kind of curve them here, but if I just do it gently, like so, it's on the line. I can see where that needs to go through to the fabric. It's about there. Take my needle through to the back, it will curve around, and that will stick up until I sew those down, and that will stick up. So back to the beginning here, we started just above the red one, so I need to come between that greeny colour and the white colour. As soon as I get the first stitch in, you'll see that it starts to come to shape. There we go. So between the next 2, and between the next one, so always go over each one. I'm almost angling that needle out from underneath the beads, coming over the top and angling it back in so it goes around the thread. There we go, nice and tight. So back up at the end of the gold one, put another 5 on. That's 4 and 5, and then just lie them down, push them up, and you can see now why we left that gap. That white one is coming across the end of the first one. So you need to leave room, and I'm going to come back to the yellow and blue, stitch between that. And what I'm doing by doing this is actually lining all of the beads up because I'm threading them on. They're all in a row and they make really nice shapes. But just do a few at a time. Don't try and do a whole shape in one go because you'll end up fighting the beads to try and get them to lie flat. So just a few at a time. That's 4, and I'll go for a red one. I think there's a couple more to get to the end, but I'm still just going to do my 5. This is exposed, it's right on the end, so you want it to look right, so just carry on with the 5. between the red and silver, and I think 2 more on the end to finish that off. Let's pick a white one and a blue one. Curl it up a little bit at the end, I think. So lie them in position, needle through to the back, and then I just have to stitch between that white one and the blue one. There we go, my shape finished. I'll just cut off that waist knot. Okay, so that's a row of beads to do your writing in, to do your lettering in, but they're all lined up in a nice row. If you wanted them to be a little bit more organic, let's say, a little bit more texture, we can put them down another way. So I'm going to hop my thread over here. I'll just do a little carrying stitch to get from there over to here. I'm going to come around this curve of the A. Again, I'm just going to start in from my edge a little bit to allow for a row of beads to come up the side here. And we're going to put them on individually now. So like we did in this main letter here, we sewed them down individually, same way, but instead of now lining them up, so we've been doing them that way, they've been going around with the holes all lined up. So we'll do the first one like so, but we can also put one in going vertically. So that one, the hole is going right to left. This one, the hole can go bottom to top. It'll just give you a little bit more texture. If you don't want a nice even row like on the E, you can add a bit more texture to this and just do different angles for your beads. You can do a diagonal one. If you place it down first, you can see how it's going to sit. And if you use different beads as well, that will add to the texture a little bit more. Let's do a horizontal one. Lie the bead down, push it into place, needle goes down the other side of the bead. You can see how they don't come out quite so straight as over here now. Let's do that one vertically. Also gives you a bit more control about where you put your beads. Doing it this way, it's a bit more time consuming. If you want a quicker method, the E is quicker, but you can have a bit more control over this one. And they're all, because they're sewn down individually, they're quite sturdy as well. They're not going to come out at all. We need a red one. Okay, one more just to get me up to that line, and then the next row will come up there. Okay, so individually around there. So let's jump to the end and see what that looks like. So you can see we finished this project now. We've done the groups of beads in the B, we've done some couching over beads, and we put them down singly. And you'll notice as well that I have finished this with something a bit different. So I've done some French knots and some colonial knots. If you like those and you want to see that video, you can see that here. They mix really nicely with the beads, gives you nice texture, so it works really well together, so don't forget to check that out as well. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to get notifications of when we upload something new. You can leave some comments below, I'll answer those, and check out all our other videos. We've got loads of different videos for you to have a go at. Thanks for watching.